Fox Nation is your place for everything Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson Originals.
If we don't stop this thing, the whole state of Maine will become an ugly place.
Exclusively on Fox Nation, taking on the issues the other media outlets won't cover.
This is the most popular rifle in America.
Drop it! Drop it!
I cannot believe I'm shooting on the Hickok 45 range.
Plus,
as other media outlets are shrinking and pushing for censorship, we will not be silenced or canceled.
listen to real and unfiltered conversations on Tucker Carlson Today.
Your refusal to apologize for something you didn't think you should have to apologize for is kind of the reason you're successful.
100%. It's our greatest blessing and our greatest curse.
And now, stream Tucker Carlson tonight.
Fox Nation gives you control, unlimited access, watch anytime, anywhere you want.
For full episodes of Tucker Carlson Tonight, available the next day, every day, commercial-free. Tucker Carlson on Fox Nation. America is streaming.
Just crank it up.
I gotta tell you, I have really grown to really like this guy. When I got a hold of him initially about coming to the leadership summit, honestly, I thought I was starting almost like a middle school kid, like I get to go to the candy store, like, yes, I want to do that. And we're so thrilled to have him in Iowa. You know, Primetime's largest platform, Tucker Carlson. People who love him, record him. People who can't stand him, record him because they want to know what he's saying. And although you might not agree with everything he's got to say or the conclusions he comes to, you have to admit he asks the needed questions that need to be asked. So I don't think I have to coax you to do this yet, but give a very warm summit welcome to Fox News, Tucker Carlson.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you.
Good job, bro.
Thank you, Bob. I love that, and I was grateful for it, except when you got to the part where you said whether you love him or you hate him, and I thought, people don't like me? I live in a very small world. I'm so glad to be here. I've spent so much of my life in your state. It's like crazy. I'm staying at the Hotel Fort Des Moines, where I spent my son's third birthday. I'll never forget that, January 22nd, 2000. He's now getting married. That's how long ago it was. I think I've done the full Grassley. I think I've been to all 99 of your counties. I have eaten in every one of them. And when I first came here in 96 during the Dole campaign, my wife was from Michigan and just a staunch Midwesterner and calls it a car and, you know, the whole thing. She's like, Iowa, I've never been to Iowa. My wife grew up in a cold climate, grew up in a snowsuit, basically, and she's like, but Iowa, man, that's like for real. And I'm from Southern California, so I was totally unfamiliar with it. And I really have come to conclude, and I mean this, that bad weather makes good people. There's no doubt about that. Warmest people, the first time I was here, we were in Cedar Rapids, and it was like one of those winters that they only, I think, have in Iowa, where it's really cold, for real. And it was too cold even to snow. It was one of those days where it just scares the precipitation away, or it freezes and it something. And I watched this kid come out of a high school wearing a John Deere t-shirt and a baseball hat, and that's it. And kind of wander at an unhurried pace down the road. And I really think that's why the people are so nice and the food is so good. If you like steak and donuts, which I do, my two favorite foods, it's beyond belief. The only thing I don't like about the state is the Skywalk, and I know everyone's proud of it, but I got lost in it last night. Coming back to the hotel, I was in it for a good hour. Everything looks the same. It's like drop ceiling, drywall, carpeting, and then, I mean, I came very close to Dubuque. I don't know if it actually goes that far, but it just kept going, and I had no idea where it was. The buddy's like, no, this is the thing in Des Moines. You got to take the Skywalk. Yeah, okay. Never again. Anyway, thank you very much. I was thinking about this. When Bob called me 6 months ago and said, will you come and speak at this? I think I've actually covered this event as a journalist, and I thought, well, that would be a little bit weird because I'm normally, standing in the corner, assessing with a highly critical eye the sweaty people up here begging for your support. And then I thought, no, actually, I'm the perfect person to come up here because I can give you advice for how to assess the sweaty people begging for your vote. Because if there's one group I know well, it's politicians. I'm 53, so I've spent my entire life since I was 22 following them around and asking them questions and mostly listening to them talk. And for that whole period, I'm not one of these people who's gotten more conservative as I've gotten older. Like, I've always been that way. And I was super unpopular in 6th grade because I had exactly the same views that I've had now. So I've always been a Republican voter, sometimes by default. Now, mostly by default, but like, what are the options? You don't have any. And so I thought I would just pass on a couple of things that I have learned or think that I've learned over years of watching politicians campaign, things that I think Republican voters need to remember, particularly now. So there's this weird dynamic where however high the dissatisfaction Republican voters have for their own leaders, the other side is so menacing, so scary at this point, a combination of fully embraced delusion and extremely high levels of aggression that, sometimes I think to myself, if this person, I don't want to single anyone out or attack anyone, but if this person had absolute power, what would happen? People would get hurt. I mean, it's that level of zealotry on display. If you can look directly into a camera and claim not simply that a man is a woman, but that anyone who won't follow you in saying something obviously untrue must be hurt, if you're capable of doing that, like, what aren't you capable of? So this puts Republican voters in a really tough spot, and I think the Trump campaign proved that they're not fully satisfied with the offerings. Fair? Fair. But again, the compared to what arises. Like, yeah, I don't, maybe this person isn't fully sincere, maybe this person is even borderline repulsive, but please, like, compared to what? The famous Henny Youngman line. Now, how's your wife compared to what? So it's easy to let your own side slide when the other side is a literally unacceptable option. And that's particularly true if you're a Christian, because the hostility to faith, but to Christianity, traditional Christianity in particular, is really one of the animating forces on the other side. I mean, let's just kind of not lie about it. And I know that there are Christian leaders who pretend otherwise, but they're not telling the truth. Because the truth is, and they pretty much say it, they hate that worldview because it's a challenge to their claims of dominion. In other words, anyone who sincerely believes in God, an actual God, probably not going to hand unlimited power to any person, right? So religious faith is a natural check on their power. That's true always and everywhere, and Christianity specifically is that. So if you're a Christian conservative, holy smokes, you on a gut level feel threatened. And I feel it too. So I get it. But this coming election, which is to say the 2024 cycle, is one of those weird moments where there's, as of right now, a pretty much open field. And we all have suspicions as to who's going to run on the Republican side. On the Democratic side, who knows? Obviously, Joe Biden's not going to be a real candidate in 2024. I won't belabor why. It's obvious. Do you have television sets? So he's not. And I'm not going to waste your time by reiterating my show and working myself into a lather. And it's so bad because it demonstrably is so bad. It needs no further evidence. So Biden's not going to run again. He can't say that because the second you do say that, you become a lame duck and your power ebbs. And so his chief of staff and deputy chief of staff and the people who are actually running the U.S. government will not allow him to acknowledge the obvious, which is, are you kidding? We'd leave tomorrow if we'd chosen a competent vice president whom anyone likes, but we can't, we're stuck. So that, is a conundrum, it's a quandary for the United States of America, but it's also a guarantee of just a mad scramble for power starting approximately the first Wednesday of November of this year, which is the day after the midterms, and that's when, I don't need to tell Iowans, the presidential campaign begins. And that's when, if you live in this state, you're likely to run into one while getting your newspaper on your lawn, because they're all there. You're laughing ruefully. I cannot even imagine being in my boxer shorts and like bumping into Beto O'Rourke. And that will happen to some of you. And it's one of God's great blessings that we don't know who. So you don't have to live in anticipatory terror of that moment. But that's going to happen. Anyway, you know this. So basically, nobody has an ironclad claim on either side to the nomination. No one could say, it's mine. No, there's going to be a fight on both sides. And that means lots of drama and ad revenue for the cable news channels, but more important, it means an opportunity for voters on both sides, I'm going to confine my remarks to the Republican side, to really think through what we want. Because voters are in that unusual and not that frequently occurring position of having all the power. You got all the power. You can decide who represents you and on the basis of what issues. And my advice to you would be take that obligation / opportunity really seriously. You can make them obey. And politicians this took me decades to figure out, they're awesome in the sense that they're very simple organisms. And they have very complex personal lives, typically, as you may have heard. Doubtless more complex than yours. I won't go further. But in the stimuli to which they respond, super simple. They don't want an unlimited variety of things. They want to win elections. That's it. That's what they do. They win elections. And if they think doing one thing will get them there, they'll do it. If they think the other will get them there, they'll do it. 1 out of 1,000 has, sincere, deeply held beliefs on which they will not compromise. And you sort of know who they are. They usually run out of Washington immediately because they're a massive threat. Oh, the guy who means it? Get out of here. But everybody else can be convinced. They just need voters to ask clearly for certain things. So here's what you should ask for going forward in this coming cycle, which again begins this fall. The first thing you should ask for is candidates who talk about things that actually matter. One of the weirdest phenomenons as a man deep into middle age who was not raised in the digital realm, I was raised in the payphone realm, is the degree to which people live their lives out digitally. And that means their friendships occur online, sometimes their romantic lives occur online, and to a huge extent, their political lives occur online. They decide what's important by reading what other people on social media think is important. I can't imagine a worse way to determine what matters than finding out what's trending on Twitter or what's appearing in your Facebook feed. By the way, those media, by definition, are open to manipulation. Like, you can create the appearance of urgency or importance very easily with digital media. So politicians respond to this, and I'm amazed every single day when I watch politicians out there telling me what's the most important thing. Now, I'm older and a little cut off just by definition because of my job, hard for me to go to CVS. But I live enough in the material world that I'm like, wait a second, I don't know a single person who's telling me, as Mitch McConnell recently told us, that the most important thing in the world is to vanquish Vladimir Putin. Now, I'm sorry, you don't have to be, I'm not a Putin defender, despite what you may have heard. I don't really care one way or the other because he's not my president. He doesn't preside over my country. And what he does in Ukraine, well, I think historically significant, certainly significant to Ukrainians, is not more significant to me than what gas costs. In fact, it's not even in the same universe. The rising price of fossil fuels is not an inconvenience, it's the whole story. Having spent a lot of my life traveling through poor countries, poor countries, by the way, who send people here who immediately succeed in our system, which tells you there are smart people in those countries who work hard. That's not the problem. Cheap energy, cheap fossil fuels make the difference between living in the Central African Republic and Des Moines. There are other differences. Nothing is that simple. But if you were to isolate the single largest contributing factor to prosperity, life expectancy, a politically placid system, it would be cheap fossil fuels. That's like why we're rich. And we happen to have the largest reserve of recoverable oil in the world. And so if the price of fossil fuels in our country, holder of these reserves, our single most valuable natural resource, shoots up, that doesn't simply mean it's hard for the proverbial guy with the 100-mile commute. It means everything's more expensive. It means you have less autonomy. Gasoline is autonomy. I can get my truck and drive wherever I want. I don't have to ask permission. It's freedom. But it's the basis of our standard of living. So and you don't need to be an economist to know this. So if that rises and you continue to get leaders that you vote for, whose campaigns you fund, who can look directly into a camera and say the single most important thing in the world is, in a material sense, totally unrelated to your life or the life of any of the other 350 million people who live here, that's a huge problem. That's not democracy. Democracy is the process by which government represents the people who live there. This is a republic, a democratic republic. We are represented by members of Congress and the executive who, by definition, are charged with doing what we want because it's our country. So to the extent that doesn't happen, it's a violation of the democratic principle, the most basic one, and it's also a guarantee of volatility. What happens when people think their votes don't matter? Well, I mean, we saw it happen January 6th. They get moved to action. They get so frustrated. No one will listen to me. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm showing up. I'm going to go to their doorstep. And over time, it gets worse than that. So if you want to keep your political system stable, you have to pay attention to what people actually want. And you have to pay attention to their deepest concerns, not their peripheral ideological concerns. Are we doing enough for trans swimmers? Can we prevent, Putin from taking Crimea? What are we doing about climate change? I mean, you can make the case those are all important things, I guess, but they are not more important than your actual concerns. And too often Republican voters, and this is the rule on the left, it should not be the rule in the Republican Party, however, they allow their politicians to say, no, I know you want that. Let me tell you what you really want. It's like, no, actually, let me tell you what I really want, since you're my representative. So, and that means you represent. So the way I judge it, and when I'm putting the show together in the morning and at night, banging out the script, I try to pay attention to the markers, the real markers of societal health. And those are the basics. The farther you get away from the basics, the more misled you are, the farther from the target you are. So what are the basics in your life? Well, if you're a parent, there's one basic. How are the children doing? You're as happy as your unhappiest child. Of course. How are your children doing? How are they doing physically, emotionally, spiritually? Are they thriving? Do they live in a country that promises them the ability to thrive going forward? Will you die knowing your descendants will be as happy and secure as you have been? Is there something that matters more than that? Is there a more important question than that? No, there's not. And anybody who says there is, again, is either so deluded that person should not have power, or that person's lying to you, period. So that should be the single-minded focus of any political party, particularly the Republican Party, because there's no option. The other party is, and you see this happen in politics, though never more so than now, the parties, of course, pivot against each other. Oh, you're for that, I'm for the other thing. It's childish, but it's real. So all of a sudden you have a political party that is making a case against having children, making a case for devoting your life to some soulless multinational corporation. I'm not against all businesses. I've always been for free enterprise. But when I hear people say, abortion's the most important thing, the most important right that we have, I ask myself, what are you really saying? I mean, honestly, think about it for a second. And I am a pro-lifer, just to be completely clear, a fervent one. But what are they really saying? So conservatives, I think very often begin with the debate over whether this is a life and whether abortion is ending a life. Well, that's not really a debate. Everybody knows that it is. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. Even the people screaming, I'm proud of my abortion. If you really felt good about it, you probably wouldn't be so brittle and loud, would you? I'm really happy about my marriage. I'm not putting on a sign and yelling at people, I'm happy with my marriage. Suggests maybe I'm not quite as happy as I claim to be. I'm proud of my abortion. Yeah, no, you're not. You're sad about it because it's inherently sad. So that's not really a debate, and we can debate what limits should be put on it, but we need to take 3 steps back and ask ourselves, what is this exactly? What are they really saying? What are they promising to the American population when they promote this? And what they're, of course, saying, and what Citibank and Nike, Dick's Sporting Goods, and all these huge companies that are affirmatively promoting abortion by paying their female employees to have abortions, we're suddenly admitting it's female employees, which is, take your victories as you get them. What are they really saying? They're really saying it is more important to serve us than to have a family. You will be happier as you rise within our company than you would be if you had your own children. Now, I never hear any Republican push back against this, but I can't imagine a more grotesque and obvious lie. Children are the most enduring source of joy. This is not an ideological point. It is true. Even when they go wrong, as they do. And by the way, it's never the parents' fault. Father of four, a little defensive. No, my kids are great. But they do go wrong, actually. And sometimes tragedies occur with your own children, and there's nothing more heart-wrenching. But it doesn't detract from the unchangeable fact that children are the main source of joy and meaning in the human life. Period. Period. So anyone who tells you, no, what you really want, Miss 28-year-old Citibank employee, is to move up to assistant vice president in charge of international bonds. Really? Really? Is someone from the HR department going to hold my hand in hospice 40 years from now? Is the company going to love me unconditionally? No. It's a lie. It's a lie. And in telling that lie, they are stripping young Americans of the promise of the only thing that matters, which is having a family. Ask anybody who's old, like over 50. What's your greatest achievement? What has brought the most meaning to you? What do you care about? You don't even need to get the proverbial deathbed scene, where it is true, and this is a cliche, but it's a cliche because it's accurate. Not one person has ever said, I should have worked on Saturdays. Honestly, imagine my 401k. That has never happened, and it never will, and it won't, because it's a measure of the relative importance of work versus children. Work is necessary. In fact, it's required. In fact, if you're a Christian, you believe we were sentenced to it in the garden. I don't know if you remember that part. You will work. It wasn't a prize. It was not an award. It was a punishment. And if you're blessed, you wind up having a job that, most of the time you kind of think is great. I mean, I feel the way about my job. I like my job. I can say whatever I want. I can tell the truth. That didn't used to be a big thing. In 1991, when I started, it was like, yeah, everyone gets to do that. Right, okay. Just me. Anyway. But it's still work. It's still work. And in the end, and the unchanging fact of life is that it ends. Something else we try to hide and disguise and distract ourselves. I'm too busy on my iPhone. I die? I don't think I do anyway. Return some more texts. But we do. That's the fact. The unchanging fact is your work actually doesn't mean very much in the end. In the end, it does not. So imagine a ruling class, the people with actual power, committed to telling young people that it does, and doing so with the aid and the financial backing of the biggest companies in the country. And I don't care if I sound like Bernie Sanders, that's true. That is absolutely true. They're promoting the idea that your family is worthless compared to loyalty to your employer and a political party. That is the sickest message I can possibly imagine. It's a totalitarian message, by the way. They don't want the competition. I mean, if your boss said to you, wear a funny hat on Wednesdays or you get fired, you'd probably put on the Viking hat, whatever, you would do it. You want to keep your job. If the boss said, disown your own spouse, hurt your own children, you'd be out of there. There's no job, from president to road builder, that is worth hurting your own family. And that's a universal sentiment. They believe that in Burkina Faso. They believe that here in Des Moines. That's just how people are. Their family is the most important thing. So whenever someone tells you, no, your family's not the most important thing, don't have one, there's a problem. Republican leaders should be focused on this to start with. This should be the organizing idea of everything that goes after. Can your children grow up in a country pretty much like the one you grew up in? With some improvements, things change. It's not a matter of being frozen in amber. It always has to be 1985, though personally, I think that was a pretty good year. But can you give that to your descendants? And do you have descendants? And by the way, if life expectancy falls, if fertility rates fall, if testosterone levels fall, if sperm count levels fall, all of which have, by margins that are unprecedented in American history, and nobody notices, and there's no candidate who says, wait a second, people aren't having kids. Like, find a clearer measure of societal health. If you believe in the future, if you feel confident in your economy and your society, you have pups. Of course. They should start there. Here's the second thing they should do, and no one will ever do this, but I think this every day. They should care about beauty. I don't think I've ever heard a politician mention beauty. And I think about it constantly. I think about it on a couple levels. First, I think about it on a political level. So and I'm hardly a Bible scholar, but of course, how do you judge a tree? By its fruits, right? You don't judge it by, what the arborist told you it was. You wait till it produces something, and then you know what it is. Oh, those are pears. They told me it was an apple tree. Well, I guess they guessed wrong. So the way that I judge ideas is by their fruit. And not just their ideological fruit, their physical, tangible, observable fruit, the things they make. So everything that we see around us is the product of ideas, of ideologies. That's where everything starts. In the beginning, there was the Word. It starts with a word, always. And here's how we know if the ideology is a good one. Noble ideologies produce beautiful results. They produce beauty. Poisonous ideologies produce ugliness. Super simple. There's a reason the architecture in Bulgaria in 1975 was hideous. Because Sofia in 1975 was controlled by the Soviet Union. Soviet architecture was horrifying. So was architecture under Mao. They knocked down everything worth having, built during the preceding millennia, and they replaced it with concrete boxes. Why'd they do that? Because those boxes, those buildings, that architecture, that design sent a very clear message, which is, you are worth nothing. There's no beauty for you. Now, why is beauty so important, and why do tyrants always destroy it? Well, they destroy it because beauty reminds you that the most important things are eternal. They're unchanging. Beauty is recognizable across cultures, across centuries. You can go to a place, a culture you're completely unfamiliar with, and if you see something beautiful, you recognize it immediately. Why? Because beauty has balance and symmetry and grace. You know it instantly. A beautiful face in this culture is very similar to a beautiful face in that culture, a beautiful building, same thing. It has balance. Why? Why does beauty have balance? Because it's derived from nature. It's derived from God's creation. So the closer we are to God's creation, the straighter the path and the better the path. So I look at the country, because I've traveled a lot. I've been to all 50 states. As I said, I've been everywhere because I did it for a living for so long. And I noticed that virtually everything built after 1945, less attractive, less pleasing, less human-centered than everything built before. I don't know what towns you all live in, but think about your own town. The prettiest buildings, they're built in 1920. It's just true. Clapboards, front porches, steel roof. The closer you get to our current moment, the more everything looks like a dollar store. And the Republican Party has somehow found itself in this position where they feel like they have to defend the aesthetics of the dollar store and the economics of it. Oh, it's the dollar, that's free enterprise. No, it's not. It's an atrocity that diminishes people, that destroys God's creation, that oppresses us with its ugliness. That is true. And no one wants to say it because, I don't know, some libertarian think tank was paid to tell you that the dollar store is attractive? I don't think it is, actually. I don't think it is. Their model, the people in charge have this kind of, if I were to pick sort of their idea of beauty, it would be like a dollar store next to multifamily low-income housing, spray painted with unintelligible slogans, right? That's not beauty. Their idea of beauty is like a female impersonator screaming at you. No. Beauty is nature. So you can tell me whatever you want about your commitment to the environment, but if you're destroying it with wind turbines, I'm sorry. I know a lot of people in Iowa make a lot of money from wind turbines. It's just true, though. As an outdoorsman, really? You're not for nature. The Republican Party should be for nature. And not just in its aesthetics, not just in its design, but in its human relationships. People are born wanting certain things. I have 4 dogs, so I see this on display, and they all sleep on the bed. So 4 dogs, 4 children. Like, the one thing I get a lot of is watching genetics at work. And I know that people and dogs behave most of the time out of impulses they were born with that they may not even fully understand, but that do not change. Period. And that is true of all people, okay? All people. So politicians who don't take that into account are not serving you at all. So if I were advising a politician, I would say the first thing I would do, what is America? Well, America is a physical place. No, it's not an idea. Anyone who says America is an idea, please. It's not an idea, it's a place. I live there. I don't live in an idea. I don't live theoretically. I get out of bed and there's like a ground underneath me. There's like soil and trees. And I would say, the left has captured the term environmentalist, and the entire environmental movement may be, I think it's probably the greatest scam I've ever seen on the most basic level. I'm not just saying I disagree with their politics and policies, which I do, but even more basic than that, like how many people at the Sierra Club, I don't know, could name 3 bird species? Or could tell the difference between a spruce and a hemlock? Anyone? Anyone? No, no one. Because they don't go outside. I'm not kidding. They don't go outside. So for them, they're like, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get a new energy grid. Okay, it's a new energy grid. And it's going to be a lot better. It's going to be a lot better for the environment. The energy grid is going to be way, way better. And no one ever says, okay, slow down, son. First of all, what's an energy grid? How's that work exactly? In fact, be precise, if you would. How's the energy generated? How's it measured? How does it get from the point of generation to people's wall sockets? Do you know? Oh, you can't drive a standard transmission? Shh, shh. No infrastructure for you. If you can't drive a standard transmission, you're not allowed near my infrastructure, okay? You go back to the gender studies department and do your little thing and fight with your colleagues over tenure or whatever, but you're not getting near physical things that are necessary to the survival of my country. You are not allowed. We're walling that off. This is adults only. But they're able to think of these schemes that, in fact, destroy the environment. And by the environment, I mean the land, because they don't care about beauty. What's beautiful? Is a wind turbine beautiful? No, actually. Rivers are beautiful. Gardenias are beautiful. Springer Spaniel faces are beautiful. Children are beautiful. The sky is beautiful. These are not things that people made. These are things that God made. And the Republican Party must defend them, not by acquiescing to their ridiculous climate change arguments, which are absurd. I could bore you for hours on this. But by defending the land from those schemes. You can't desecrate something you didn't build, and that hill you did not build. Get your stupid wind turbine off there and slink back to New York. And the Republican Party should be about nature in human relationships. And I won't go through it again. But the most basic desire of most people, not every single person, but of most people, the overwhelming majority of people, is to mate and have children and to perpetuate the species. That's not a desire that you were taught in college. People who've lived in total isolation come to that conclusion because it's not a conclusion. It's an instinct. That's nature. And anyone who tries to tell you that it's not, or who tries to muddy the term sufficiently that people aren't even in touch with their own instincts, or they deny their own instincts, well, I'm not really sure if I'm a boy or a girl. Okay. That's kind of the last thing that needs positive affirmation. No, I'm serious. I drank too much for many years, so someone would say, well, that's just kind of the way you were born. I remember not being able to find my car outside 801 one night many, many years ago. I'm not proud of it, but it's true. Thank God I wasn't able to find my car. But anyway, the point is, if someone had said to me, it's just, that's how you were born. You were just born to have, 11 vodka sodas. It's just who you are. No. That's not something that needs to be affirmed. The positive, the good, the calm, the placid, the orderly, the natural. That's what needs to be affirmed. And here's the last point that I will make. You need to be really wary of candidates who care what the New York Times think. You really, really do. No, and I mean that. And if you say that to Republican voters, you're like, well, of course, the New York Times is communist. Like, I don't even read it. Really? Because your leaders do. And they really care. They really, really care. Now, how do you know that? They'll never admit it. And I'm sure many will come on the stage in the subsequent months, and they'll attack the New York Times and whatever. But they don't mean it. And I know they don't mean it because I watch them very carefully when things go sideways. That's how you know who someone is. When things get out of control unexpectedly. Mike Tyson, who I don't normally quote in public settings, the ear-biting boxer, did say one brilliant thing that has never left me. And he said it about boxing, but it applies to life. He said, everybody got a plan till you get hit in the face. And that is true. Everybody got a plan till you get hit in the face. And that's when you find out who the men are. What do you do next? It's like you're sitting on the plane, and you're like, well, if this plane went down, there's the exit. I'd go out that exit. Yeah, maybe you would. We'll wait and see until the plane crashes. Then we'll find out. We'll wait until a cop takes some convicted felon into custody in Minneapolis on Memorial Day weekend 2020. And then we'll find out how you really feel and who you're trying to impress, because we'll find out what your gut instincts are. All of a sudden, the other side will jump up and say, we need to make radical wholesale change to our society because of this. Now, you don't know anything about what actually happened. And one thing I can tell you after 31 years in this business is you don't know right away the details of any news event, period. Period. You just don't know. They're unknowable, actually. And that's why anyone who draws instant, quick and dirty lessons from some dramatic piece of videotape is either an idiot or trying to manipulate you, usually the latter. But the second something like that happens, I pay very close attention to how people react. I'll never forget that. I mean, I had no idea who George Floyd was, and nobody did. I didn't know the backstory. I had no idea. I saw the video. It looked bad to me, but what do I know? It's always more complicated than that. Nikki Haley, who I've always liked, I like Nikki Haley. She's charming, she's smart, popular in South Carolina. Nikki Haley saw that. She was sitting at home. She sent a tweet out that said, I feel this is personal and painful to me. And I'm almost quoting. I'll never forget it as long as I live. And then she said, in order for healing to occur, what happens next must be personal and painful for everyone. I thought, really, why is that? And of course, what happened next was personal and painful for everyone. Our cities burned down, and a lot of people died. And I thought, why should what happened between a cop and George Floyd outside a convenience store in Minneapolis be personal and painful to anybody else? What are you even talking about? Oh, you have no idea what you're talking about. You're trying to please the people whose opinions you actually care about at the New York Times. That's just true. Doesn't mean she's a bad person. I don't think she is a bad person. I've always liked Nikki Haley. She was right here. I tell her to her face, I like you. Don't want you in charge of anything. Because the second things get intense, the second the other side really unleashes and starts yelling so loudly that you can't think clearly, I want a leader who can still think clearly. I was walking 3 summers ago up in Maine where we live, and I stepped on an underground bee's nest. It shows you what a nature man I am. I thought all the bees in our place were in the trees, but no, they're in the ground, and I stepped on one. And unfortunately, I wear baggy shorts. Huge disadvantage if you're stepping on bees' nests. I'm not going to go more than that, but I was. And an untucked shirt. I don't know how many bees were underneath my clothes in this ensuing 4 seconds, but probably 1,000. And the noise of bees when they swarm you, it never happened to me before, and I pray to God it never will again, is very loud. And they're coming in direction, oh my gosh. And I ran and jumped off a dock with my cell phone and wallet and everything, but I couldn't think clearly, okay? So the national media is very much like a swarm of bees. They move together, They understand the New York Times doesn't have power without the Washington Post, NBC News, and CNN. They move as a group. They have the same message. But their main strength is aggression. They just come right at you. You're a racist. What? No, I'm not. By the way, after many years of being called names, I've realized that if you criticize white liberals, you're a racist. It always cracks me up. I always think to myself, wait, what? No, I'm not mad at black people. I don't like you. How is that racist? I mean, you know, maybe you've got a counter case to make. Maybe you've got really good qualities. But disliking you, Mr. New York Times reporter, who look exactly like me, does not make me a racist. Shut up. That's where I am now. But anyway, when they come at you with some charge like that, oh, you're working for Putin. Putin? I've never been to Russia. If I wanted to be there, I guess I'd already be there with Ed Snowden or something, but I don't. I live where I was born in America. Putin, 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 Putin. When that happens, and I can say because I've lived it, like a lot, you need to maintain clarity. You have to maintain clarity. And that's the moment when you find out who's on your side. And I've just got to tell you, and I mean this, there are an awful lot of Republican leaders who, in the end, they're on your side. I mean, they like you or whatever. You're nice. Like, let's have another fundraiser. You know, you're great. How's your wife? You're great. But if it's a choice between selling you out or offending the New York Times, it's not really much of a choice. And you see this with the girls' sports stuff. Oh, it's a very complicated issue. No. Cheating is not complicated. If there's a dude competing in girls' sports, that's cheating. And there's no other word for it. And if you're giving minor children drugs that sterilize them, not a complicated issue. Sterilizing children, I can say I'm against that. I mean, just call me crazy. I want to go out there and say this thing publicly. I want to kind of come out of the closet as opposed to sterilizing children. I am. Some say it's controversial. The number of governors I've talked to are like, well, it's a very complicated. Really, in what sense is it complicated? So under what circumstances are we for sterilizing children? Or cheating at my daughter's swim meet? Okay, just speak slowly so I can understand. And what they mean is, if I do this, people who already hate me will criticize me in public. Again, it doesn't mean you're a bad person if that's your reaction. Probably many people's reaction. It doesn't mean you're totally unfit for leadership. You are totally unfit for leadership. To get my vote, you do not need to be an ideologue. You don't need to explain some economic theory. It's okay if you don't fully understand the Austrian school. But when it comes down to it, if people who've lived in this country their entire lives, sort of followed all the rules, mostly, paid a lot to the government, hoisted the flag, sent their children into military service for generations, if those people are getting shafted and you're not putting everything on the line to protect them and their children and their grandchildren and generations yet unborn, you just don't deserve the vote of anyone. I mean that. So I will stop there. And I will say to you, I hope that you will hold them accountable in a real way and never be embarrassed to ask about issues that matter to you. There's no national council that determines what's supposed to matter to America. Twitter isn't real, okay? It's the domain of super unhappy people with empty personal lives and creepy political agendas. What matters to you is what matters to you. And you have every right, in fact, you have a constitutional duty to tell your representative to represent you on those issues. Thank you.
We gotta get a pic here.
Oh!
Great job.
Thank you.
Great job.